All right, everybody. Very excited to be here for this panel. A lot of folks that are out there are interested in the events world, not exactly sure, what's important, how to get started, what skills are necessary. And I myself kind of found myself in this position, not expecting to be in it about 8 years ago, getting started with offline events, then moving into online, now a mixture of the two. So today I'm joined by 4 wonderful human beings that are in one way or another involved in the event space. Before we get started, I'd just like all of them to introduce themselves. So we're going to start in terms of what I can see on my screen. Audra, you are the furthest to the right. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, folks. Audra Montenegro. I come from an event background in technology with O'Reilly Media, doing global events, anywhere from data to DevOps to software architecture, and then moved over to DataStax, joining the virtual world, doing podcasts and virtual events. So DataStax is a startup that promotes open cloud architecture. Database as a service is more so what they're known for. And now I'm with the CNCF working on KCD programs, so Kubernetes Community Days programs, which are led by the community. And thank you, Bart, for having me.
Of course. And we'll be talking more in detail specifically about KCD and some of the things that are going on there later on. Great to have you. Next up, we've got Renata. If you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Renata. I work for Any9s. And Any9s is a company that works with cloud native technology. We create tailored solutions for cloud. And I particularly don't come from a tech background, although I do have experience in participation and organization of events since 12 years, I guess. And yeah, now here we are coordinating Cloud Native SAR Meetup, which is an event to promote and build community around cloud native technology in Saarland in Germany, where I live.
Very, very good. Awesome. Next up, Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia, and I am Strategic Account Manager at Sivo, where I help out with sales and events. So we are a cloud native service provider that's focused on Kubernetes. So my background, helping plan anything from small meetups to big events like our one coming up in February that we're really excited about.
Very good. Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Annalisa.
Hello everyone. I'm Annalisa Gennaro, and I work as head of marketing and communication for Spark Fabric, a silver member of CNCF, and a tech company focused on cloud native architecture and environment. We develop any kind of application, doesn't matter whether greenfield or modernization of legacy applications. And I fell in love with the community, CNCF community last year. I've been working in this sector and field since 1.5 years only. And I found open source wonderland. I entered the glossary project as a first step. And then I entered the organization team for KCD Italy.
Very good. That's coming up in November. Awesome. So we got people from different places, different backgrounds, and I think that's what's going to make this a very rich conversation. So to get started, if we're talking about events, we often need to be thinking about what's an objective, right? Whether it's a birthday party or if it's KubeCon or if it's KCD or different kinds of things with that in mind. When establishing objectives for an event, what are things that folks might keep in mind with that? Let's start out with you, Sophia. What's your take on that? What are objectives that you try to think about if you're organizing an event?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest one is going to be education. So we really want people to come in, learn about whether it be our company, new technologies, whatever it may be. Education and networking, I would say, are probably the biggest things that go hand in hand.
Very good. With that in mind, what are some of the things that you want to have before getting started? Like very often we might be thinking about metrics, how is this going to generate leads, building awareness. Some of these things might be more measurable than others. When approaching that, Audra, what's your take on that? How do you do it?
I love to have a solid organizer team. So You definitely need to have, balanced program committee too, along with that. And then definitely know your goals, set those first, and make them feasible, especially for first time events. And then also you want to deliver relatable content to your crowd. I'm specifically coming from tech events, so storytelling, use cases, that to me is relatable content. And less pitching of products. But if you're doing a vendor event, then that's a whole nother story. And then there's also like deep dive content, tutorials, workshops, training courses. And then, like Sophia said, great networking opportunities.
Very good point. And with that in mind, we often say start with the end in mind. I think it's from Stephen Covey about, the 7 wonderful habits of highly successful people, a book that you can read in your own time. With that being said, and like you were mentioning, particularly the aspect of networking, Renata, in your experience, what are these things that you say, like, ideally our event is going to do the following? In your case, what are some of those final objectives that you have in mind throughout the course of the planning and execution of the event?
Well, specifically for Cloud Native SAR, our main objective is to build community. And in general, whenever I'm working any kind of event, this is my main objective as well. Not building community specifically, but just community, because I feel like over the years, I tend to, at least as in marketing, we tend to see people as sponsors or like target audience, but in the end it's all about community. If you're creating an event, either you are thinking about building community or creating awareness around the community, or want to discuss topics and products that are used and are interesting to this community, right? And if you are somebody that is attending to this event, you want to experience the sense of community. So in general, it doesn't matter the kind of event that you are creating. For me, the main objective is always community.
Very, very good point. We often think about, user experience, customer experience. I think event experience is also a thing about, what kind of environment do I need to create? As Audra mentioned, are we doing a deep dive? Is it more vendor focused? Is it more about getting folks together and sharing ideas? What based on those objectives, what are the things that I'll need to have in place? We use your example, Annalisa, as being very involved in Kubernetes Community Days Italy. What are some of the objectives that you have there? What are some of the things you're trying to create?
We are talking about people at the end. So we just focus on people, on the fact that people need to meet for real. It's not even before the pandemics. It's we have been talked a lot about the pandemic effects, but it's not that. People need to meet in person, need to talk with people and to confront with them. So it's the objective is to nurture that need somehow, and of course to enhance knowledge. But I guess that it's like we all know about the marketing paradigm and B2C and B2B, and we all know that is something very old-fashioned somehow. We are talking about H2H marketing nowadays, because at the end, this is what we are talking about. There's a source, a target, and a message, and you just need to convey that message in with the best code you can find for that target. It sounds banal, but I think this is what communication is and what marketing is, and so what events are.
Very, very good point. As much as we can try to get as much as we can try to get in the technical side, I think we're all sort of agreeing on this community aspect of the need to come together. We look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the sense of belonging, something that's very strong on there for different people, and there are different ways that can be achieved. Now, something that was, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, and another objective we have is to create a safer environment where people can feel themselves. And this is something that I felt personally. It works, it can work, but it's tough at the beginning because we are in a very technical environment, in a very technical space. And as a non-tech person coming from another world with other knowledge, it was hard enough to get into the behaviors and the processes and the mindset we have in open source, in the open source community. So the more models, the more people talk other languages, and the more community can grow.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point about breaking down assumptions that what might be obvious to some might not be to others. And this is something I've talked about a fair amount as well as a non-tech person who's entered a very technical space. Perhaps some of the challenges in the beginning and feeling out of place and over time realizing that wasn't the case, but something that I try to be mindful of that, we want to be, if we talk about being welcoming, being inclusive, that these things are really important, that we can't, compromise on them or leave folks out. That being said, I think it was you, Sophia, that mentioned the importance of planning and having a team. It was either you or Audra, I'm not sure, but we'll get to both of you. Don't worry. I would highly recommend to anyone who's going to organize an event, try not to do it alone. I am reasonably okay at certain things, and I am terrible at far many others. In order to have that proper balance, just like having a company, you don't want 10 people just with the same mindset that are running an event. So with that in mind, what are some of the areas that you think, and I want to open this up to everybody. We'll start with you, Sophia. What are some of the areas that if someone's going to want to run a successful event, what are some of the things that they'll have to keep in mind? And based on that, different kinds of profiles, the right kind of mixture of people to get that going?
Sure. So, when you're planning an event, I think it's important to start the planning before you start planning. So I think you really need to have a community and a network around you of amazing people that all really band together to pull off an event. And then once you kind of get to that stage where you have your community, you have your network, it's working together with whether that be your team of executives and DevRels and people to really be able to pull this event off, not just the event team.
I think it's a solid point. If it's only a couple of people that are doing all the heavy lifting, it's going to be very, very difficult. And also limitations based on certain kinds of experience. As much as possible, build a robust team where people know what's expected of them. I think that needs to be very clear. It's like, we want you on the team, but what do you want me to do? What's going to be necessary there? I think that's a great point. Anything that you would add to that, Audra?
Yes. I found when I worked on content at O'Reilly Media events that a strong program committee was huge because their networks helped you in a lot of ways. So you could have somebody who could speak to the vendors who would be giving a 5-minute keynote as part of their package, and they would coach them on how to storytell and not pitch. And your program committee will also have a network to help your sales team find sponsorships. They also have a network of speakers. If you're not getting enough proposals submitted or you need a backup talk because your waitlist folks can't join last minute. And having the diversity within your program committee is huge too, and your organizer team. You just really want to bring balanced ideas to the table. And kind of going back to Annalisa's point, and yours too, Bart, about coming into the tech industry and feeling, different or alienated. I forget who it was, but it was actually a guest on this podcast that I run. She was saying, it's great to be different because you really want to bring something different to the table that others don't. So really embrace your individuality and know that, your difference is adding to what the event is and, its values.
Couldn't agree more. And that provides differentiation so that it's not, business as usual. I've seen this 100 times. And also that can provide particular challenges in an online format as opposed to offline, but offline as well too. I think we've all been at events where it's like, okay, I've kind of been in this before, been there, done that. What's sort of the added value or extra ingredients there. And the more that I think people let that individuality, as you said, breathe into the event, people will feel that because the passion and excitement will be there. And I think those things will become clearer. That being said, you mentioned the importance of program committee. I think it's a huge point. If we're thinking about objectives, who are the folks that I'm going to need involved to guarantee that we're going to get that right look and feel, that we're going to get the content that we need? And I think we're all in agreement too that you can never start too early. And so whatever you're doing in your dashboards and your Excels and your spreadsheets, move everything 2 to 3 months before, because
even longer.
These things
even
will happen.
Earlier.
Yeah, even earlier,
even
2 years
earlier.
before if you can. It's really never too early. But it's part of the process that, dates can get a little bit slippery. Now, when we get into that, maybe a little bit more, and I think one other thing I would like to mention though is that I see this with different event organizers. As we're all saying here, having a network of different people who can help out is really important. Some folks that are starting an event, they may have a Twitter account that has 100 followers or 200 followers, but they may have someone on their DevRel team that has 5,000, and so that person can help draw attention. Think about that, those kind of techniques to get that moving as well. Now, so we've got a little bit covered on the team. Not everyone's going to be an expert in social media. Not everyone's going to be an expert in establishing partnerships, negotiations, building budgets. There are different things we can think about there. In your case, Renata, how do you go about planning? Are there any tips and tricks that you might want to throw out there, things that you've noticed in your experience that are effective, or things to be avoided for that matter?
Planning. As an ADHD person, planning is not my strength, to be honest. It's something that I struggle a lot over the years because it requires so much of thinking and making connections that will happen just in the future, and remembering all of those is not very easy to me. It doesn't come naturally, really. So to be quite honest, of course, we have a team and we have a person that it's much more into planning than I am. But besides that, I really rely heavily in automation tools. And basically, it's my life. And the first thing I have to do every morning is my routine as a neurodivergent is to look at all the automation tools that I use and be sure that they are working in the proper way, that they have the correct metrics, that they have the correct triggers that will remind me of everything that I have to do on day to day until the event and after the event too. Because one thing is that the event doesn't finish when it's done.
That is a beautiful point, and I think we can all agree on that. And thank you so much for mentioning that planning does not go until when the last speaker finishes their talk. And so for all of you that are attending, whether it's KubeCon or KCDs or anything like that, always remember that the folks that are behind the scenes or organizing the event have a lot of work to do when everybody goes home and enjoys, organizing their swag or looking at their pictures or things like that. A lot of the real heavy duty work starts when the event finishes, of the follow-up, the thank you notes, all the different things, looking, how are our numbers, the metrics, there's reporting that goes on there. So I think that's a really good point. And about automation tools as well too, also as a neurodivergent person with ADHD, couldn't agree more. I also, in terms of automation tools, like to find people that are very organized program managers who can make sure that things are going on track. So that's always a big thing for me in terms of team building. Now, something that I think we all have to admit may happen in one way or another. Murphy's Law. What can go wrong probably will at some point. So with that in mind, I think we can all agree that we've all seen moments in events where it is important to be able to improvise. However, I don't think the number one strategy should be, we'll just improvise. We want to have as many things as planned as possible, but I've had speakers arrive late, every kind of technical difficulty you can imagine, the wrong slides being sent. Annalisa, can you talk about the importance of being able to improvise and what kind of, how you can build that into the process?
The improvisation. So, no, it's an art. Improvising, it's an art that all event organizers need to manage somehow in their life. You need to have the cultural background of the team, though, I reckon. So that if you really know the values and objectives that are behind, then you are free to do that. And you can improvise if you have a team behind. So I go back to the question before, but I can tell you about the KCD Italy team, if I may. We are 12 team people, split in two teams, one marketing team and one technical team. And we discuss the distribution of the main domain of interventions at the beginning of the year. So we try to match tasks with personal preferences or inclinations, as Renata was hinting at. Some are experts on newsletters, some on graphics, some on writing, but we believe in team in terms of support. So when someone is failing due to a workload on a daily basis, because we are all work for specific companies, we are volunteering at last. Someone else collect those tasks and carry them out. We never count the number of tasks carried out by each person. So, and that is something important, because if you have a team to rely on, you can improvise. You have always some support somewhere, and you manage to give some results, to have some results at the end. We are not tightly coupled, task and people, so it's very easy to be there in case of need.
Very, very good.
And that's
no, I think you said if you have the strong foundation of trust,
yes,
team where everybody knows who's doing what, skill sets, etc., it makes all these things much more fluid. Yes.
If I may add, I think it's very important to have ingredients of a good event, to have nice people to work with each other, which means trust, being safe, feeling safe, education, kindness, all that, but also clear rules that are shared by all organizers. You need to have a sort of checklist of rules that everyone is aware of beforehand.
Yep.
And then the capability to listen, for example, that is something else, not to hear but to listen. And then time, patience, resilience. If you have all of that, you can improvise. Otherwise, you get stuck.
It'll get pretty messy pretty quickly.
Pretty messy.
Good. Now, one thing that's really important about events, some events can be done for free. The bigger they get, they will probably involve some kind of a budget. This can be a particularly difficult issue for some people that maybe aren't so accustomed to the sales world. They're having to go out and solicit sponsorships. Sophia, tips and tricks in that regard for folks that may be interested in the events world, but don't necessarily have experience in that particular part?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things, though, is to make sure that you find sponsors that are on brand for you and for your event. But it also comes down to, I think the worst that people can say is no. So a lot of times it's asking and putting in front of them something that makes sense for them as a company as well. So that really goes back to, again, the speakers and the audience that you're going to have, making sure that it all is on brand for the event that you're putting on.
This is a great point. Find their objectives and connect them to yours. The other thing, like you said, some are going to say no. And for a million you may have the best idea in the world. Their budget may be tied up. They may have other things that they're doing. There are different things that are going on there. Like you said, as much as possible, put it in their language with their objectives, and also be thinking very concretely about the audience as a good match for the content that we're offering, the audience that we're building, and what that company may have as an interest. One thing that I think that was good that Audra mentioned previously, and Audra, I'd like you to chime in on this one too about sponsorship, is, with sponsors is the main point I think here is clarity. Like you're mentioning about how can we guide, how can we coach them into not just doing a pure vendor pitch, but something that's going to be more beneficial from the audience. We always have to remember they are paying. And so we want to have things clearly listed about what are our deliverables, the things that we're providing. And not that it gets to the point of being at the expense of the quality of the event that we're trying to deliver. What's your experience been like there? And are there any tips and tricks that you might be able to offer?
Sure. Just laying out your packages in advance with the prospectus, right? Like, here are the benefits that come with your package. Here's what you're paying for. And then as a salesperson, definitely building that relationship and trust. So you will be their advocate with the rest of your team, but also, like Annalisa said, having those guidelines set and those boundaries set in the beginning, so the program committee can say, like, this is what the sponsors are allowed to do, and we're happy to partner with them to help elevate them in the best way, but always being, a kind voice, but very firm at the same time, because you will get pushback, and it's just finding that balance of, like you said, Bart, having that good attendee experience, not compromising the content, but also giving your sponsors what you promised them. So just, again, laying it out very clear in bullet points from the beginning, from the get-go, when you start building your prospectus, and having that collaboration and those, guidelines set with your team ahead of time.
Very, very good point. Because I mean, to steal the term from other contexts, you could have a sponsorzilla, a sponsor that's expecting total control or total influence. Like you said, you can kindly refer them back to the email where the deliverables were explained, where this is what you're paying for, and in exchange, it's going to be this. And that you essentially create a situation that's going to reduce that kind of conflict or tension. A lot of it, like you said, though, in the very beginning, make sure it's very clearly understood, give them the opportunity to ask questions before getting started, before they sign a contract or things like that.
Absolutely.
But always remember that you have that in mind. Now we're getting towards the end, and it seems, we're all in the event space. We've all been in the event space for a while. And it seems that, in my experience, at least it's, there are moments of, I don't want to say extreme stress, but moments of kind of tearing your hair out before an event and asking yourself, why am I doing this? Or this is the last time I'm doing this, or I don't want to do it again. Renata, do you think that there's something about events that offers an adrenaline rush that we can't get somewhere else? What is it about them that makes them so attractive, given some of the difficulties that go into it? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I'm a reward seeker. I always searching for the most exciting thing to do, the next most exciting thing to do before I get bored from it. And events don't let you get bored ever. There's always so many things happen and so many turnarounds. And the way I found to cope with it is one, to use kindness and be thankful for everybody else, everybody that's doing their part. Show appreciation and show kindness even when it's really, really hard, because sometimes it is. And I realized during this 12 years that fighting some fights with aggression don't help you with your issues. So just break them with kindness. Reply with kindness always, and this will take you so far. And the second thing I've learned about how to cope with this stress is to have a good laugh about it. Things will go off script, and it's just how it is. You can plan, you can find the best project manager, you can have like all the planning in the universe. There's always something that will not go according to what you're planning, and before going down spiral, just take a good laugh about it and gather together with and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. If it's not going to be okay, because it's not over.
A very good point. I think going back to the importance of having a good team, these are the people that you can laugh with. These are the people that you can say, okay, I just need to sort of, vent for a little bit about this particular situation, and then we're going to move forward. And like you said, keeping that kindness externally as well as internally. It's something that's not necessarily for everybody. And I think that, the right way to do is what you're describing.
Yeah, I'm guilty of using, humor as a coping mechanism for everything. I like to laugh about myself and about everything. And this might not be for everyone, but it's how I find to cope with this, because it's really tough, and it's so much that sometimes it's even overstimulating, and to keep up with it without losing your sanity, sometimes you have to laugh, even if it's just by yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely laugh before crying, always.
Yeah.
Whenever possible. Okay, we're getting towards the end, so I just want to finish up. If everyone could leave us just with a tip or some advice for folks out there that are interested in getting involved in the events world, we'll start with you, Annalisa. What would be your one piece of advice for someone who's maybe interested in this world, but they're not entirely sure? Saying, if I were you, I would definitely keep in mind.
Just dive into it. Don't think about it. Just do it. And I'm not an event planner. I had some experience, but I'm not specialized in that. But you just dive in, and you will learn. You find help and the support. So feel free to try. to try yourself as well.
Very, very good. I think the only way to really do it is to start doing it. And the good
Start
thing is
doing
that you don't have to plan a KubeCon. You don't have to plan a CIVO Navigate.
exactly.
You don't have to plan a KCD.
Even a small meetup to start
exactly.
with,
and
chat
it's fine.
with someone.
Exactly. Right. And also the ability to do this online gives us a lot of flexibility. What about you, Sophia?
I think just meet as many people as possible. I think the beauty of events is that you meet people from all different walks of life all over the world, whether it be virtually or in person. So get to know them individually, get to know what they're looking for in events, and then just keep taking notes, keep growing, keep learning, start small, and then build on that.
Fantastic. And I think we can all agree one of the beautiful things about events is precisely that it puts us in, I know all of you because of different events, whether it's online or offline. So I think this is a perfect example of that. Renata, what about you?
I think I would say don't stop because of limitations you think you have. You know, as we discussed and everybody agreed, this is not a one-man job. You know, it's a team, and everybody, even the people that don't have any idea that have a participation on this, they actually do. You know, like the people that are actually coming to your events, they are big important part of it. And if you are afraid because you maybe are like an insecure person, or if you are not very much outgoing, you can always find in other people, or you can always find a way to cope and to move forward and go forward with your project beyond your limitations. There's always a way.
Very, very good. And once again, that importance of being resilient and trusting yourself that you have the ability to do this and getting the right team. Last but not least, Audra, I'm going to ask you to give your advice about one specific point that we didn't address, and we actually will have to address probably another session in a future date. The importance of building a diverse and inclusive event, because it's something that we've seen time and time again. It's something that's challenging in the open source world, challenging in the area in which we work. And like I said, we could write a book about this. We could have 10 sessions about this. But if we have to get it compact, what's the one thing you're frequently finding, or the piece of advice that you would like to give most often?
It's a lot about your network and really putting out there an inviting environment. So making it clear on your call for proposals, like we are going to have a diverse lineup. These are our goals. And just stating like, this is what we're doing, kind of manifesting it. Then you're putting out there the expectations with your committee, with your attendees, with the people on your team. And then also, I guess just networking within your committee and your members. And then when you have a form on the CFP, like making it inviting for people who might need monetary sponsorship to simply just check a box and say, yes, I would like help, because we find a lot of people don't like asking for help. So there are all kinds of tips and tricks. But the overall advice is to just make it very clear your goals and put it out there that, your intention is good and it's going to happen. Like just manifest it, because it will.
Very, very solid. And I think also, like you said, having it part and parcel of the event from the very beginning, not something that you do 3 days before. Oh, look at our lineup. We need to start and make sudden changes. That's not really a good time to do it. And it's going to make it much more stressful and complicated. That needs to be from moment 0 or -1 or whatever we want to say, but from the very, very get-go. If you're not sure about these kinds of things, feel free to reach out to any of the people that are in this session to get advice, as we've all been at events and are making this an essential component of them. So I think that, there are different ways to go about it, but going back to what you said, your network. If you feel like, oh, maybe I don't have the network, somebody else does. So ask, and people will be happy to help. So I definitely hear you on that. This has been wonderful. And I think we definitely need to have a part 2. So keep your calendars open for the next 3 months after KubeCon, after the KubeCon dust settles, after KCD, after KCD Italy. We may have to do it before CIVO Navigate in February, which all of you need to check out. But an absolute pleasure to be with all of you today. Thank you very much. I'm sure folks are going to learn a lot from this session. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.